Imagine a company happily paying 6 months of an engineer's salary in hidden penalties, like completely destroying their own team's innovation, and then enthusiastically promoting the person who caused all the damage.
Right. I mean, that sounds completely made up.
Exactly. It sounds like a bizarre form of corporate self-sabotage. You would really think the board of directors would step in immediately.
Yeah, you really would.
But according to the research we're looking at today, this exact scenario plays out, every single day in offices around the world. And it goes completely unchecked under the seemingly harmless guise of workplace drama.
Yeah, we tend to think of drama as just a temporary distraction, like a personality clash.
Right, it's just two people not getting along.
Exactly. But when you actually measure the financial and structural fallout, you realize it's an incredibly efficient machine for draining organizational resources.
Which is exactly why we have a custom deep dive lined up for you today. We're looking at a genuinely fascinating academic caselet. It focuses on a mid-sized Indian IT firm called Aravind and Technocraft.
And our mission today is to pull back the curtain on this everyday workplace tension.
Yeah, we want to explore the hidden systemic costs of this kind of conflict and, to figure out the mechanics of why the people who manufacture the drama almost never pay the price for it. Okay, let's unpack this. We have three main players in our story today. First, there's Raja.
Right, the silently suffering software engineer.
Exactly. He's a consistently high-performing software engineer who is currently enduring a very quiet nightmare. Then we have Kabir. He is the ambitious, highly motivated, results-driven team leader.
And finally, Sitara. She's the project manager who oversees both of them.
Yeah, she is well-meaning, incredibly busy, and, as we'll see, deeply conflict avoidant.
What's fascinating here is that we are going to look completely past the interpersonal bickering, past the surface level of the story to see the actual architecture of drama.
The architecture of drama, I like that.
Yeah, the source material uses frameworks like psychological safety and equity theory to prove a point that might surprise you. Workplace drama isn't a personality problem. It's a structural design flaw.
I want to jump right into the inciting incident of this caselet because it perfectly illustrates how subtle this architecture can actually be.
Right.
The scene opens on a Monday morning, specifically at 8:03 a.m.
Very specific.
Right. So Raja arrives at his workstation just 3 minutes late. And the moment he sits down, the casual conversation at the desks right next to him abruptly drops to zero.
Wow.
It is a physical, impenetrable wall of silence. Like no one looks at him, no one says good morning. And the caselet notes that Raja has been experiencing this daily freeze-out for 6 weeks.
6 weeks. I mean, 6 weeks of an environment where the people you rely on to do your job have suddenly and collectively decided you no longer exist.
Sounds awful.
It really is. The psychological toll of that is immense. Because human beings are biologically wired to perceive social exclusion as a literal threat to survival.
And the trigger for this 6-week exclusion is what really caught my attention. Because it's so incredibly mundane.
Right.
We have to rewind to a sprint planning meeting 6 weeks prior. During that meeting, Raja politely provided some historical data that contradicted a timeline estimate given by the team leader, Kabir.
And he wasn't aggressive about it, right?
Not at all. Raja didn't yell, he didn't grandstand or try to embarrass anyone. He just brought up the data to prevent a future bottleneck. And Kabir's reaction was chilling in his professionalism.
How so?
He just smiled, gracefully acknowledged the point in front of the room, and then completely ignored the data. He just proceeded as if Raja hadn't spoken a single word.
That moment right there is the pivot. Kabir publicly maintains the appearance of an open, collaborative leader. But covertly, that is the exact second the retaliation begins.
Yeah, Kabir starts systematically fencing Raja in. He uses what the office quietly calls corridor briefings.
Oh, the classic water cooler chats.
Exactly. These are those informal, seemingly casual 5-minute chats by the water cooler or in the hallway outside of the actual meeting rooms. But it's in those hallways where the real project decisions are being hammered out.
And if you aren't in the corridor, you are functionally excluded from the architecture of the project.
Right. On top of that, Kabir's allies start dropping hints to other departments. They start branding Raja with having, quote, attitude issues and being difficult to collaborate with.
This actually brings us to a critical piece of research on workplace bullying. Researchers document that the characteristic texture of modern corporate bullying is rarely dramatic public confrontation.
It's not shouting matches in the boardroom.
Exactly. It is this systematic, low-intensity exclusion, It's designed to be deniable at every single point while remaining utterly devastating in its cumulative effect on the target.
But I have to push back on this being a purely structural issue, though. I mean, Raj is an adult. He's a high-performing software engineer with in-demand skills.
That's true.
So if Kabir is icing him out with these passive-aggressive corridor meetings, why doesn't Raja just pull him aside? Or march into Sitara's office and demand a resolution? Aren't we kind of absolving Raja of his own lack of assertiveness here? Like, why just sit there and take the silent treatment?
That's the natural question to ask, for sure. But it assumes a level playing field that simply does not exist.
What do you mean?
Well, Raj's paralysis is entirely logical when you understand a concept called weaponized information asymmetry. Information asymmetry just means one person holds crucial knowledge that the other doesn't.
Okay.
So when Kabir holds a corridor briefing without Raja, he is artificially creating a reality where he holds the complete map and Raja is driving blind. Kabir has weaponized the flow of information.
Oh, wow. I see.
Yeah, he knows that by keeping Raja out of the loop, Raja will inevitably make a minor error. Or, he'll ask a redundant question in a larger meeting, or look disconnected in front of the client.
Which makes the phrase attitude problem the perfect corporate weapon.
Huh.
I mean, if Kabir goes to leadership and says Raja wrote bad code, Raja can just pull up the code, run it, and prove him wrong. There is an objective truth there.
Exactly.
But if Kabir says Raja has a bad attitude, Raja has no defense. You cannot put an attitude in a spreadsheet. You can't disprove a subjective vibe that your boss is actively manufacturing.
That is the trap. If Raja goes to HR and says, well, Kabir didn't invite me to get coffee and he's having hallway chats, Raja sounds petty and paranoid.
He sounds like the problem.
Exactly. The brilliance of weaponized information asymmetry is that it forces the victim to sound unreasonable if they try to describe the mechanism of their own abuse. Kabir's power doesn't just come from his formal title on the org chart.
It comes from controlling the information.
Yes. It comes from his absolute control over those informal communication flows.
So Kabir has successfully isolated Raja. And Raja is trapped in a situation where speaking up makes him look like the problem. Let's look at what happens inside Raja's head when he logs in every day.
He knows he's doing great work that nobody will acknowledge. The caselet mentions Adams's equity theory here, and I really want to understand how that internal calculus actually breaks a person's drive.
Well, Adams's equity theory is fundamental to understanding employee motivation. The theory proposes that employees don't just look at their salary in a vacuum.
Right.
They are continuously weighing their contributions, their long hours, their problem solving, their emotional labor against their rewards. And then, crucially, they compare that ratio to the people sitting right next to them.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It is like two people playing the same slot machine at a casino. You're sitting there putting in $100 bills, pulling the lever, doing all the work, and getting absolutely nothing back.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
And the guy right next to you puts in a single penny, pulls the lever, and hits the jackpot.
Yeah.
The frustration you feel in that moment isn't just about losing your own money.
No, not at all.
It is the psychological weight of the broken mathematical ratio. It's the sheer unfairness of your massive effort versus their tiny effort compared to the rewards. That broken ratio destroys any incentive you have to ever pull the lever again.
That slot machine analogy perfectly captures the internal math Raja is doing. He is watching Kabir take sole public credit for the team's achievements during major client presentations.
While doing none of the heavy lifting.
Exactly. He's watching Kabir control all the key information, assign the high-visibility tasks to his specific allies, and face absolutely zero accountability for icing out the rest of the team.
Meanwhile, Raja's own high-quality, complex engineering work is completely rendered invisible.
And Adam's equity theory reliably predicts the exact sequence of events that follows that perceived inequity. Reduced motivation, psychological withdrawal, and ultimately the formulation of an exit strategy. The math tells Raja his effort has no currency in this specific environment.
Which brings us to the broader impact on the company. If Raja is checking out, Aravind Technocraft is losing one of their best engineers.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look at the research on psychological safety. Psychological safety is the shared belief that a work environment is safe for interpersonal risk-taking.
Like, for example, politely correcting a timeline error with historical data during a sprint meeting.
Exactly.
Something that is literally in the job description of a good engineer. You really want them to catch errors before they ship.
But when an employee like Raja experiences systematic retaliation for voicing a legitimate data-backed concern, the organization suffers a catastrophic invisible loss.
No.
They don't just lose Raja's voice, they lose the voices of everyone who witnessed the retaliation. Humans are incredibly adaptive. The rest of the team watches Kabir isolate Raja, and they learn very quickly and very efficiently what behavior the company actually rewards.
They learned that the official HR policy document about valuing open feedback is entirely fictional. The real unspoken rule of the company is simply do not contradict Kabir.
And that silent compliance becomes the new operating system of the team. But Kabir and Raja aren't operating in a vacuum. A dynamic this toxic doesn't sustain itself for 6 weeks without an enabling environment.
Someone has to be letting it happen.
Someone with authority, yes.
Which brings us to our third player, Sitara Nair, the project manager who oversees this entire division. The caselet details Sitara's reaction to all of this, or rather, her intentional lack of reaction.
Right.
3 separate colleagues actually drop vague hints to her about the tension on Kabir's team. They try to sound the alarm, and Sitara just dismisses it. She literally tells herself, I trust the team to sort it out like adults.
A phrase that sounds like empowering leadership, but is actually an abdication of duty.
I want to look at the mechanics of why she abdicates that duty. Is Sitara the villain here? Because honestly, confronting a star performer who is bringing in the numbers is a nightmare for any manager.
It really is.
The source material reveals the very uncomfortable truth behind Sitara's blind spot. She avoids dealing with Kabir because he is her best performing lead on paper. His client satisfaction scores are high, his sprint velocities are fast.
In short, his metrics make her look incredibly good to the upper management.
Exactly.
You've hit on the exact mechanism of the enablement. To understand Sitara, we turn to the theory on organizational silence. The analysis here demonstrates that Sitara's avoidance is not a neutral act.
We often mistake doing nothing for staying neutral, don't we?
We do. But by choosing the temporary comfort of the present moment over the long-term integrity of the work environment, her non-intervention transforms into a very loud organizational communication.
Can you break down the HR architecture of that? Like, how does the company's own system pay her to look the other way?
It comes down to what the organization measures and rewards. Sitara's own performance bonuses and career advancement are likely tied strictly to those hard metrics. Sprint velocity, budget adherence, and client retention.
They are definitely not tied to team churn, psychological safety, or collaborative health.
Exactly. Her literal financial incentive is to remain completely blind to Kabir's toxicity as long as the code ships on time. If she intervenes and disrupts Kabir, she risks a dip in the very metrics that determine her own success.
So every single day she does nothing. She is signaling to the entire team exactly what kind of behavior Aravind Technocraft is willing to tolerate and subsidize.
That's spot on.
She might not be actively malicious, but her silence gives Kabir the absolute permission to keep running his corridor briefings.
Because if the manager doesn't stop the behavior, the manager is endorsing the behavior. The organization's true values aren't what they write on the lobby wall. Their true values are what they're willing to tolerate.
Let's look at the inevitable climax of all this tolerated behavior. 8 weeks after that initial sprint meeting, Raja finally reaches his limit. The daily grind of that broken equity ratio forces his hand.
The predictable outcome of prolonged psychological withdrawal.
Raja gets a job offer from a competitor. What is truly painful to read in the caselet is that it is only a modest salary increase. He isn't leaving for a massive payday.
No.
In fact, he would have gladly stayed at Aravind Technocraft for his current salary if the environment had just been psychologically safe. So he sits with this competitor's offer for 4 days.
And what does he do?
During that time, he drafts 3 separate detailed emails to HR outlining the exclusion, the corridor briefings, and the retaliation, and he deletes every single one of them.
He deletes them because he understands the actual mechanics of the system better than the HR manual does.
He calculates the trajectory of a formal complaint perfectly. He knows that if he hits send, HR will launch an investigation.
But because Kabir controls the information asymmetry, the investigation will likely conclude that Kabir is just professional, though interpersonally blunt.
Exactly. They will classify the exclusionary corridor briefings as informal, agile communication. And that vague, undefinable attitude problem narrative that Kabir planted will be used as evidence that Raja is just a disgruntled employee who wasn't a team player.
The system is fundamentally designed to protect the high performer.
Right. So Raja realizes that
Speaking the truth will only damage his own professional reputation on his way out the door.
So he takes the only rational, self-protective path left available to him.
He signs the offer letter,
Yeah.
and in his exit interview with Aravind Technocraft, he just checks the box for career growth opportunities. He smiles, shakes hands, and says absolutely nothing about Kabir, the water cooler whispers, or the toxic culture.
Wow.
The caselet summarizes this with a brilliant observation. Honesty in an exit interview is an act of charity that the organization has to earn, and Aravind hasn't earned it.
That is a profound structural reality. Giving feedback requires trust that the feedback will be utilized to fix the problem, not weaponized against the person giving it.
Exactly.
Organizations devoid of psychological safety will never get the truth from their departing talent. They will only ever get polite, sanitized fiction.
The aftermath of Raja's polite fiction is staggering. Sitara hears about Raja leaving from an automated HR notification. She feels a brief, tiny pang of guilt, takes 2 client calls, and completely forgets about it.
The work is just reassigned.
Right, but the infection's still there. 3 months later, a second engineer on that exact same team leaves for the exact same unspoken reasons. The broken equity ratio claims another high performer.
And Kabir.
The architect of all this drama who drove 2 key engineers out the door. Because his metrics remained artificially high, he is promoted to senior team lead the very next quarter.
Which perfectly validates everything the remaining team members learned about what the system actually rewards.
So what does this all mean? When we tally up the real damage here, what did this subtle, deniable drama actually cost the company? Because looking at the org chart, Kabir won, and Sitara's metrics look fine.
Well, Kabir won the battle, but the organization is bleeding capital. Here's the enlightening insight from the data. The measurable costs are massive and entirely unrecorded.
Right.
Just losing Raja cost Aravind Technocraft roughly 6 months of his annual salary in direct recruitment, interviewing, and onboarding expenses for his replacement.
And that is just standard human resources accounting.
Exactly. But beyond those hard dollars, the company lost 2 years of deeply specialized institutional memory. They lost the nuanced client relationships Raja had meticulously built.
Not to mention the future innovation of an engineer who left purely because he wanted psychological safety.
And then, because they didn't fix the root cause, they paid that massive hidden tax all over again 3 months later when the second engineer walked out.
And none of those massive financial penalties show up in the performance report that got Kabir his promotion.
The system hides the cost of the drama from the people rewarding the drama.
Which brings us to the core thesis of this entire deep dive. Organizations do not suffer from drama simply because they accidentally hired a few difficult people.
Right.
They suffer from drama because they have built structural systems, flawed incentive structures, unmonitored communication norms, broken accountability mechanisms, and explicit cultural permissions.
All of which make drama highly profitable for those willing to leverage it, and costly only for those with the least structural power.
Meaning that if HR had swooped in and fired Kabir or sent him to a mandatory empathy training seminar, it wouldn't have actually fixed the root issue at Aravind.
Not at all. Changing the individual actors without changing the stage they are performing on is utterly ineffective.
Yeah.
If you remove Kabir, but you leave Sitara's incentive structure in place, where she is financially rewarded for looking away as long as the sprint velocity is high, the system will rapidly generate a brand new Kabir to fill the vacuum.
That is a deeply uncomfortable reality for any leadership team to confront. You really can't just blame a bad apple when you built the orchard that grew it. As we wrap this up, I want to turn this over to you, listening to this right now. Think about your own daily work life. Reflect on those seemingly harmless corridor briefings going on outside the conference rooms, or those subtle, unexplained exclusions you might have witnessed, or even experienced yourself.
It's so common.
It is. And it is incredibly easy to internalize that chill in the air as a personal failing, or to just blame one mean-spirited coworker. But remember what the data shows us today. Workplace drama is not a personality quirk. It is a structural failure. When you see it happening, you are watching a system function exactly the way it was incentivized to function.
This raises an important question. If we accept the premise that managerial avoidance is an active choice, and that silence is actually a very loud, explicit form of organizational communication, well, what exactly is the silence in your current workplace communicating to you right now?
That is a question that completely shifts how you view your 9 to 5. Thank you so much for joining us on this custom deep dive. We hope this helps you look past the easy narrative of difficult personalities and start seeing the hidden incentive systems operating behind everyday behaviors. The next time you walk into a room or log onto a call and feel that sudden, unnatural chill in the air, you'll know exactly the kind of machinery you're really looking at. Until next time.